So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem Star Wars. So let's start the series. The YV-560 entered and landed next to a Barlas-class medium freighter that was already inside, then its boarding ramp lowered and two heavy-set human men in armored gear stepped out while pushing a hovering metal cage covered with a white sheet. The starship then proceeded towards the desert planet of Tatooine before it broke through the atmosphere and headed closer to the surface. A rocky canyon soon came into view. The man in the dark green armor said, "Hey Fujin, do you think we can get something to eat?" "I'm hungry." "Me too, Raijin, and we're going to get a lot of food after we bring in this," replied the one known as Fujin, who was wearing dark purple armor, smiling. When he patted the covered cage, he heard pounding and moaning inside. "Stay there, little friend, you're our big meal ticket," Raijin said with a smile as she peered into the cage. "You bloody well ate all the provisions in the ship, and that was 2 months' worth of food," a female computer voice said behind them. "I can't believe you 2 sacks of flesh are still hungry." A droid with a vague humanoid form and a head resembling an R3 series astromech unit approached from behind the guys. It also had a restraining bolt attached to its chest. "Yeah, we did," Fujin said with a simple smile and giggle. His sibling remarked, "But we're hungry again, robot lady." They were escorted out of the hangar and down a hallway by L3-37. "The name is L337, remember it." "Oh, whom am I kidding? You two aren't known as the Idiot Brothers for nothing, now move it, that ass gets pissy if he's kept waiting," they said. After going through, the 3 of them entered a lab with tables holding chemistry sets, standing shelves brimming with books and supplies, and scientific apparatus such as an examination table. The droid said, "Doctor, the idiots have brought what you wanted." A man with shoulder-length pastel blue hair and conventional scientist attire emerged from behind a shelf. "About time, I was afraid you two failed me," he said, smiling at the sight of the covered cage. As Fujin smiled, "No way, Mizuki, we did good." "Show me," Mizuki said as she approached the cage. "Okay," Raijin said, snatching up the sheet and removing it. An 11-year-old boy with blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker-like markings on his cheeks was gagged and chained within the cage. He was wearing brown shoes, tan slacks, and an orange long-sleeved shirt. "A child? Why do you need a child?" L3-37 asked the scientist after being startled by the child. "I don't need to explain myself to you, L3, your job is to pilot my freighter, not to question my decisions, understand?" Mizuki growled. "Strap the child onto the examination table," he said, turning to face the Idiot Brothers. "You got it," Fujin laughed. When he opened the cage, Raijin dragged the boy out, who struggled and kicked, hitting his kidnapper in the stomach many times. Raijin merely laughed and said, "He's feisty. Just get him strapped down, and hurry, Amachi could be back soon," Mizuki said as she approached a nearby equipment tray. The brothers shackled the blonde child's wrists and ankles down with energy shackles, freed him, and held him against the examination table. When Fujin said, "All done," Raijin smiled and removed the boy's gag, saying, "Let's take this off too." Their hostage snarled, "Arg! Let me go! Let me go!" "Quiet, boy, you should feel honored, you have been chosen to be the first human test subject for this project. Once I'm done with you, you'll be so much more," Mizuki said, grabbing an injector gun from the tray and approaching the youngster. "And it will all be thanks to this," he said, taking a vial full of pink liquid out of his coat pocket. As L3-37, who was observing the entire situation, said, "Mizuki, you can't be serious, child experimentation. You have no idea if that serum will work, it could kill the boy. The scientist fastened the glass container to the injector. Mizuki frowned at her. That is Dr. Mizuki to you, L3. Plus, that is a test I wish to conduct, survival of a human subject, something even that fool Amachi has yet to do. You are insane, the droid said. Listen here, you walking junkyard, the only reason I tolerate you and your self-improvements is your unique navigational system and piloting skills. It's also the reason I don't wipe your memory files, the scientist said angrily before approaching and pushing her against a wall. Now, shut up and go sit in a corner like a good droid, he said. After releasing L3-37, he returned to the struggling toddler, who reluctantly went to stand in a corner. Let me go, was their young captive's constant plea for release. Mizuki pulled up the boy's shirt's right sleeve, put the needle into his arm, injected the pink liquid, and stood back to observe the outcome. Shut up, brat, you should feel grateful for this, she said. The boy continued to resist until he started to twitch violently. This continued for a few seconds before his eyes closed and his body went lifeless. Mizuki said, not what I was expecting, as she moved toward the blond boy. Is he dead? Raijin inquired, leaving L3-37 stunned. Fujin remarked, too bad, I liked him, he had spunk. When his trapped subjects slammed their forehead into his face, the scientist pulled out a little flashlight, opened the child's right eye, and was ready to examine it. Arg! You broke my nose, you little brat. Mizuki snarled in agony. The little brat grinned at his creation while the idiot brothers giggled and L3 felt relieved. He got you good, Mizuki, Raijin chuckled. Taking out a handkerchief and holding it to his bleeding nose, the scientist said, shut up. You two can go, I'll contact you again if I need something, he said. After the brothers' laughter ceased, Fujin questioned, what about our reward? Mizuki laughed, already done, the 50 tons of food has been loaded into your ship. Raijin yelled, yay! Food, before turning to face his brother and saying, let's go eat it now, big brother. The elder brother said, I like that idea, little brother, let's go, and the two idiot brothers exited the lab to return to the hangar for their ship. With the handkerchief pressed to his nose, Mizuki inspected his test subject and said, no physical change present. Do you feel any different? He asked, snatching the boy by the face and making him look into his eyes. The blonde said, go die in a ditch, you ass. The scientist gave him a backhanded smack across the face for his response, saying, maybe a second dose will trigger something, as she quickly produced another vial of pink fluid. A second dose? You don't even know if the first one has started to work yet. L3-37 said as he was about to do it. I told you to shut up. For once in your useless life, follow orders like the droid you are. Mizuki said as he spun in her direction. L3's patience had finally run out as he started to prepare the injector gun. She had been abused by Mizuki since they first met, and it was time to stand up. The only issue was that she couldn't move against him directly because of the restraining bolt attached to her body, so she would have to come up with another plan. She glanced around quickly and her optics fell on a nearby chemistry set, and then a plan came to her mind. While Mizuki was completing the second dose preparation, L3-37 cautiously approached the equipment. As she approached, the makeshift droid pushed the chemistry set onto the floor close to the scientist. The sound of the instruments crashing attracted his attention and made him pay attention to what had just happened. Glowering at L3, he asked, what did you do? The chemicals that had spilled combined and ignited, causing an explosion powerful enough to send Mizuki flying into a nearby standing shelf. He then fell to the ground. L3-37 hurried to the examination table as soon as he saw the scientist dead, as the blast's flames spread onto some nearby objects. "Don't worry, I'm going to get you out of here," she gently murmured to the trapped boy, who struggled even more when he saw the droid. After hearing that, he became calm, and L3 released the energy shackles, causing him to leap from the table. She said, "What's your name, kid?" In response, the boy said, Naruto Uzumaki." "Well, Naruto Uzumaki, I'm L337, now, let's get you back home." As they headed for the exit, a laser shot struck L3-37 in the left shoulder, causing her to shout in astonishment. When they turned to look, they saw Mizuki standing again with a smoking blaster pistol in his right hand. He growled, "Neither of you are leaving. Run, Naruto." "Get to the freighter ship," said L3 as they moved in front of Naruto. With hesitation, the blonde lad said, "But Dash." The droid cried out, "Run. Now." As L3 moved closer to Mizuki, he gave in and fled the room. However, before she could react, her body seized and she fell to her knees. The scientist took his left hand out of his pocket and showed that he was pressing a button on a small device, which turned out to be the remote control for L3's restraining bolt. As his nose continued to bleed, Mizuki approached her and grinned maniacally. "Looks like I'm going to have to find a new pilot droid, maybe I can get one without any kind of free will," he said. When the scientist felt a severe pain spread from his left wrist, he was about to pull the trigger when he shouted out and realized Naruto was biting him. Mizuki growled and pointed his blaster at the child's face, saying, "You little brat." The scientist yelled in agony and dropped the remote to L3-37's restraining bolt as he was ready to shoot, but the blonde jumped away, causing him to shoot himself in the wrist. Naruto swiftly grabbed it and pressed a button, causing the bolt to disconnect and enabling L3 to stand again. As Mizuki pointed at Naruto, she said, "That's it. I've had it with you." L3 grabbed his right wrist and pointed the gun away from the youngster, preventing him from firing. "No. More," the droid squeaked, breaking his joint. L3-37 swiftly grabbed the scientist's arm and flung him into a nearby heavy wire shelf after he yelled in agony and was forced to drop his weapon. He hit the shelf hard and fell to the ground, but before he could get up, the rack he connected with flipped over and landed on top of him. Then Mizuki said, "Ah. Damn it." He was stuck and had to fight to get out, but he wasn't seriously injured. "Let's get out of here," L3 said, turning to Naruto. He agreed right away, and the two of them departed the rapidly burning laboratory. Mizuki's yell of wrath was the last sound they heard. The Barla's class from earlier had vanished, so Naruto and L3-37 sprinted into the hangar and headed straight for the YV-560. They ran across the passageway, up the freighter's boarding ramp, and into the cockpit. "Take a seat," L3 said, gesturing to the co-pilot's chair. As the droid sat in the pilot's seat, the blonde boy did exactly that, removing a cable from her side and connecting it to a console. "Hold on, we're getting off this planet," she stated to her passenger after starting the spacecraft. As soon as the freighter lifted off and left the hangar, Naruto hurriedly sat down in his chair. Soon after, the starship rose into the sky, sliced through the atmosphere of the planet, and descended into the depths of space. The sight of the many stars left the young blonde speechless, but when L3-37 whispered, "Strap in," he snapped out of his reverie. Naruto was captivated by the lights rushing across the stars in space, and he spent no time in doing so before the makeshift droid pulled a few of levers, forcing the ship to accelerate to the speed of light and enter hyperspace. First time in hyperspace? L3 asked, observing his astonishment. "Ah-ha," the boy replied. "I'm going to take a shot in the dark here and assume you don't get off your own planet much, am I right?" "Yeah, my parents don't have a starship, don't really need one, I guess," the brunette replied. "Why's that?" the droid inquired. "My parents are farmers, the only thing we have is a hover truck used to carry the produce we harvest and sell to the nearby town." "I see, so, it's just you and your parents?" Nodded. "Most of the time, though my pervy godfather stops by once in a while, we also have a couple of droids that help us in the fields, though they are more like mindless machines, unlike you." "Oh, I see," said L3, feeling rather flattered. "Hey, L3?" the boy said with a smile. "Yeah?" she inquired. "Thank you, for saving me." "Oh, you're welcome, why did you though?" L3 paused for a time before responding, "Well, mostly, it was the right thing to do. Had I known Mizuki was having a human child test subject brought in, I wouldn't have done it. It wasn't right of him to put you through who knows what, call it, righting a wrong." "Oh," Naruto said. "Also, I did it to get back at that ass. I've had enough of him and his verbal abuse. He was like that to me ever since I've known him," replied the droid. He glanced at her injured shoulder and said, "Oh, does your shoulder hurt?" She took a look. "Droids don't feel pain, besides, it looks worse than it actually is, but I appreciate your concern." The boy said, "I can fix it for you if you want." "You know how to fix droids?" He replied, "Yeah, my dad taught me, he lets me help whenever we need to fix one of our helper droids." Maybe I'll take you up on your offer," replied L3. "Okay," Naruto said with a smile. She merely looked at his hand and tilted her head in perplexity as he held it out to her. "What is dash?" "It's a fist bump, a sign of friendship. You hold out your fists like this and give them a friendly bump. I'll show you, hold out your fist." Wondering where this was headed, L3 followed his advice and held out her fist as he did. Naruto then leaned forward and gently bumped her fist against hers. He smiled and laughed, giving the droid a thumbs up. "See? Now we're friends, believe it," he said. "Friends, I think I like that," she said, glancing first at her fist and then at the kid. Before L3 sat up and became conscious, Naruto grinned in return. "We're going to exit hyperspace, hang on," she said. He returned to his seat as the spacecraft gradually left hyperspace, facing the planet Corellia, after the artificial pilot had pushed the two levers forward. Leaning forward in awe, Naruto said, "Wow, so that's what my home looks like from space. Like what you see?" L3 laughed. While continuing to gaze at his homeworld, the boy nodded. "Good, now, let's get you home." Without delay, she piloted the ship in the direction of the planet. An isolated region on Corellia. A little farm with a house, barn, and 6 gardens lay at the base of a large mountain close to a temperate forest. A red-headed woman with violet eyes, dressed in a beige dress, a dark green apron, and brown boots, stood outside the homestead and appeared quite concerned. "Naruto! Naruto! Naruto!" she exclaimed after taking a long breath. "I heard a man say, Kushina. Do you see him?" A blond, blue-eyed man in a dark blue bodysuit, forest green vest, and black boots emerged from the residence. "No, and he's never been gone for this long without telling us. I'm worried, Minato, what if he's hurt?" "What if he's, "Oh, I don't even want to think about it," Kushina responded with tremendous emotion. "Stay calm, dear, we can't think the worst yet, we'll find him," Minato said as he approached her and wrapped his arms around her. A thundering, swirling sound filled the air before she could speak. "What's that?" the redhead inquired. They were startled when they noticed a YV-560 light freighter in the sky. Naruto was visible through the window of the cockpit, waving at the two adults as it sank toward the ground. "Is that Dash?" Kushina questioned incredulously. "Naruto?" Minato concluded. The aforementioned child rushed out of the spacecraft as the YV-560 dropped its boarding ramp after extending its landing gear and touching down just outside the farm. The child yelled, "Mom! Dad!" and headed straight for the two. His beaming parents rushed to him and exclaimed, "Naruto!" After leaving the spacecraft, the three-member family quickly embraced while L3 saw them from a distance. Minato remarked, "Thank goodness you're all right, son. You had us worried sick," Kushina said, glaring at their youngster. "Where have you been? Why were you gone for so long?" "I was in the woods when these two big guys came up behind me, tied me up, and threw me into a cage," was Naruto's prompt response. His mother exclaimed in disbelief, "What?" "Yeah, they took me to some kind of desert planet, then they strapped me to a table and this creepy scientist guy wanted to do some weird experiments on me," his father said. "That sounds awful, but how did you escape and return home?" "L3, she saved me and brought me home," Naruto said, beckoning her closer as he glanced at L3-37. "Mom, Dad, meet L337, the droid said as he approached her. "Hello," she said with a hint of apprehension. The robotic pilot was shocked when Kushina suddenly appeared and put her arms around L3. The redhead replied, thank you so much, for returning our boy to us, you know." With a hand on L3's shoulder, Minato said, "Yes, thank you, we are truly grateful." The robot said, "Why, you're welcome, but you shouldn't be grateful, after all, I was the one who transported your son to that mad scientist, sadly." Naruto spoke up immediately, "Yeah, but it wasn't her fault, that creepy guy made her, he had a restraining bolt on her and treated her horribly, he was going to shoot her for saving me." "How awful," Minato murmured. "Yeah, he was a real asshole." "You watch your language, young man," Kushina said sharply to her son. Naruto complained, "Well, he was," and then smiled. "Can L3 stay with us?" "Pretty please," he said. When L3 heard his plea, they were taken aback. Naruto's parents exchanged a smile. "Of course she can stay," Kushina said. With a glance at the robot, Minato said, "But only if L3 wants to." With a broad smile and optimistic eyes, the youngest of the three humans gazed at the improvised robot. "Well, it would be rude to refuse such an invitation," replied L3. "Yeah," the child said as he rushed to embrace the droid. "Ha, a family of huggers, this will need getting used to. You guys gotta see the ship we came in, it's really cool," Naruto said with a smile as he released her and turned to face his parents. As he hurried in the direction of the YV-560, Kushina chuckled and said, "Naruto, wait. The blonde child, come on. You gotta see it," abruptly collapsed to the ground. His parents and L3-37 exclaimed, "Naruto," before hurriedly approaching him. When Minato picked up his son, he was breathing quickly and was unconscious. Kushina begged her child, "Naruto. Naruto. What's wrong? Say something." Her spouse questioned, what could be wrong with him? L3 said something, "I might have an idea, we better get him to the ship, there's medical equipment in it, hurry. Naruto's parents followed her as they carried their infant as she made her way to the ship. The light freighter YV-560. Naruto was sleeping on top of an examination table in the scientific research area, connected to a life support computer that was monitoring his vitals. His parents were there as L3-37 took a tiny sample of blood from one of his arms using a syringe. Kushina questioned the droid, "Are you a medical droid?" L3 responded, "Maybe a part of me is, but you tend to pick up a thing or two after watching a scientist for 2 years. After carrying the sample to a nearby counter and squeezing the blood onto a glass dish, the improvised droid put it under a microscope's lens. She adjusted the instrument a little before peering into the eyepiece. By the stars, L3 gasped after a second. Minato questioned, "What is it, L3?" "Take a look," she said, moving away from the microscope. When Naruto's father approached and examined the scope, he startled when he saw the red blood cells turn pink and spiky before normalizing. "Kushina, you might want to see this," Minato said to his wife. Kushina approached and examined the microscope. She was visibly surprised as she witnessed her husband's actions. "What's happening to him? What's happening to Naruto?" she asked, glancing at L3. "I wish I could give a definite answer, but it appears whatever Mizuki pumped into Naruto is finally taking effect," replied the robot. Minato inquired, "And what exactly did he put into Naruto?" "A serum. I remember seeing Mizuki making it before he had me fly those 2 idiot bounty hunters to this planet. It was hard to tell, but I remember seeing vials containing the DNA of various arachnids, such as spiders." Concerned for her son, Kushina questioned, "But, what is it doing to Naruto?" "I don't know, but I can tell you both this, he won't be the same after today," L3-37 said as they approached Naruto and peered down at him. The following day, Naruto Uzumaki woke up and was informed of what was happening to him, but he simply told his parents and L3 that he felt fine. Life returned to normal, and L3 was now a part of the family, helping out with the chores and keeping Naruto out of trouble. As L3-37 stated, Naruto Uzumaki was never the same after that, and his life changed in ways that no one would ever believe. Soon after, new developments emerged. The first was when Naruto became more involved in the engineering of the farm's helper droids, as Minato noticed. A few days later, L3-37 noticed that the boy was starting to move more quickly, was getting stronger, and had increased his agility to a higher level. The biggest change occurred a week later when Kushina entered Naruto's room to invite him for dinner and discovered him crawling on the walls and ceiling. Naruto kept his changes a secret from the public, but he was unable to conceal his increased intelligence because he put a lot of effort into his studies and learned things he had never done before. Nevertheless, the boy was able to stay under the radar and go about his life while developing an interest in a few new things, such as space travel, for which he asked L3-37 to teach him how to fly in the YV-560, and he learned how to do it quite well. The young Uzumaki also began to pursue mechanical engineering, which he applied to the development of various devices and the enhancement of helper droids. Nevertheless, he also developed a covert interest in bounty hunting, which he investigated after learning of stories of people apprehending criminals in return for cash. He was unable to explain why, but the occupation captivated him, and the more he considered it, the more he wanted to give it a try. When Naruto was 16 years old, he dressed up in a homemade bodysuit, sneaked out of the house, and went into town where he learned that a fugitive criminal was wanted for a substantial amount of money. He used his newfound skills to track down and capture the fugitive, then brought them to the authorities and collected the substantial reward. The entire experience was extremely exciting, and the young Uzumaki continued hunting over the following few weeks, soon after hearing about a bounty hunter who could adhere to walls to move around. When his parents heard the rumors, they knew right away what was happening and confronted their son, who had no choice but to spill his guts. Kushina and Minato demanded that he stop, but Naruto admitted that he felt alive and that what he was doing helped prevent dangerous criminals from hurting others, and he was determined to continue no matter what. His parents did try to stop him, but each time it was unsuccessful. For the next 2 years, Naruto kept his chosen career apart from his personal life and made a new suit. During this time, criminals gradually stopped fleeing because they were afraid of his alter ego, and things started to calm down. His hunting career seemed to be coming to an end until he heard that someone was interested in hiring him. While posing as his other self, he met with the client and discovered that the job was on a different planet. The fact that Naruto had a starship on hand was fortunate, but L3-37 insisted on accompanying him because he would require a navigator and he had only been to outer space once before. She also went at the behest of Kushina, who was naturally terrified for her son's life and wanted him to return alive. The two of them left the planet and returned 2 days later with a significant amount of Republic credits for the bounty hunting job, but the experience made the young blonde realize that there were plenty of opportunities for employment on other planets, which led him to make the historic decision to leave Corellia and travel the galaxy. When he informed his parents of his decision, Kushina naturally became very concerned, but Minato reassured her that Naruto was more than capable of managing the career he had chosen. They granted him their blessings, but only on the condition that he return home occasionally and bring L3-37 with him. He and L3 agreed to these terms, and over the course of the following few days, he and his droid companion gathered all the equipment and supplies they would need and prepared the YV-560 for prolonged interstellar travel. When Naruto and L3-37 finally had to leave home, Kushina and Minato were proud of their only child for making such a significant step forward, but they were also sad to see him go. After an emotional farewell, the foursome headed out on a brand new adventure with their droid co-pilot. Over the next 3 years, the young Uzumaki carved out his career and reputation until he became one of the most feared bounty hunters in the entire galaxy. Many criminals came to fear him and the nickname he was given back on his home planet, Shadow Spider. These days, the YV-560, let Han Trilek, a woman whose nude body was covered in black tribal tattoos, was not alone in the king-size bed in the crew quarters that had been converted into a master bedroom. The bedside chronometer turned over to 8 a.m. and began beeping, but stopped when a red-colored hand tapped a button on its top. "Time to wake up, lover," she cooed as she nestled up to the person next her. The individual moaned before turning over and exposing himself as Naruto Uzumaki, who is now in his early 20s and has a toned figure, slightly longer hair, and a few scars that adorn his skin. "5 more minutes, Talon," he said, opening his eyes briefly before turning over on his back. Rather than honoring his request, Talon kissed his neck and ran her fingers sensuously across his chest before leaning over and nibbling on his right ear. "I remember 5 minutes being longer than that," Naruto said, opening his eyes once again and grinning at her. With a cunning smile of her own, the Trilek reappeared and said, "I was a Sith lady, I'm used to getting what I want." The history of Talon. One of the most dangerous Sith ladies in history, the Han Trilek was formerly known as Darth Talon. She worked under Darth Krayt alongside Darth Nihil, upholding their lord's will during his rule. However, after Krayt's apprentice betrayed him, Talon found herself up against Nihil, who was promised a prominent position in the New Order. She fought back, but was injured and imprisoned in a modified cryocycle stasis chamber instead. Talon was imprisoned for centuries until Naruto, who was pursuing a reward on the planet where she was abandoned, found her pod. He released her and took her on board his ship. The Twi'lek attempted to control her after she woke up and her injuries were attended to, but her cunning and sensual methods disinterested him and eventually led to their eventual romance. They traveled to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, where Talon was taken into the Chamber of Judgment with her lover following behind so he could be there for her. Problems arose weeks later when the Jedi Council contacted Naruto and announced that they had learned of Darth Talon's return and her inclusion in his crew. They demanded that the bounty hunter bring her to them to face justice for her crimes, and he knew better than to refuse them lest it worsen the situation. The bounty hunter's request was granted by Masters Yoda and Mace Windu as a favor for all the jobs he performed for them. The two have been together ever since. The Lethan Twi'lek became Naruto's sparring partner, additional co-pilot, and hunting partner. The Jedi Masters were about to pass judgment when Shadow Spider defended Talon, admitting that she posed no threat to innocent lives. He could tell the council was worried about the former Sith, so he offered to be her probation officer and supervise her. Backstory ends. Talon laughed softly and continued kissing Naruto's neck. "Or maybe you're just a spoiled princess," he said. The former Sith asked with a sultry smile, "Is that bad?" before pressing her bosom against his chest and encircling his neck with her leku. "No," smirking, Naruto said. When the bounty hunter felt something warm on his left ear, he broke the lip contact and saw that it was another female Twi'lek, but this one had full lips and bright green skin. Talon started kissing him deeply, and he returned her action completely. They were nearly engrossed in their passion. "I see you're awake now too, Ula," Naruto grinned. Ula sulked at them, saying, "I am, and you two are having fun without me, you are so mean." Talon laughed. "Well, maybe I just wanted some alone time before I have to share him." The backstory of Ula. 5 months ago, Talon and Naruto were searching for a potential bounty on Tatooine, the planet where he was taken as a child. They learned of an underground auction in Mos Eisley and thought their target might be there, so they went and located it. The two stayed hidden as the event proceeded, with Ula being the first item up for grabs. She was being sold into slavery and was dressed in a skimpy fishnet outfit that made many of the men in attendance swoon. As the would-be bidders dispersed at the sight of the dreaded Shadow Spider, Naruto and Talon became enraged at the sight of the terrified Twi'lek. He released Ula and was ready to depart when she begged him to take her back to her home planet of Ryloth. The bounty hunter was taken aback by her request, but he knew it would be the right thing to do because she wouldn't survive long on a world ruled by the Hutt clan. After Shadow Spider granted Ula's request, he and Talon took her on the ship and headed to Ryloth. The bounty hunter asked her how she got into the auction, and she revealed that she had tried to become a dancer on Tatooine but had been abducted by slavers. Naruto removed his helmet and offered his sympathy, assuming she was a little distracted by his attractive appearance. Talon smirked and tried to lighten the mood by entertaining the Green SK with tales of his exploits and adventures, which helped to improve her mood. They soon arrived in Ryloth and landed at the Lesu spaceport, where they hoped to refuel before departing and arrange for transportation for Ula. Although Ula was glad to be home, her mind was racing with the stories Naruto had told her, which made her want to travel the galaxy. Talon sensed her inner turmoil and gave her some advice: "Do what you think is best for you." The former Sith also pointed out that she could join their crew and be with her savior. After Naruto completed refueling the YV-560, the two Twi'leks came up to him and told him that Ula had decided to join their crew. He was apprehensive about the idea, but his concerns were allayed when Ula mentioned that she could serve as their cook because she had some culinary experience. Talon made the deal more agreeable by agreeing to teach their new crewmate how to shoot a blaster and fight hand-to-hand. He laughed and accepted their suggestion. They set out after acquiring provisions and some new clothing for Ula. The attractive new cook performed her duties admirably from that day on, and it didn't take long for her to start dating Naruto alongside the former Sith lady. Backstory ends. Watching the two Twi'leks quarrel like sisters, Naruto grinned and said, "Okay, girls, that's enough, you know there's plenty of me to go around, but it looks like I have to remind you," he said, putting his arms around them and drawing them close. Before turning to Talon, Naruto's lips briefly but passionately kissed Ula. His two beautiful lovers started to rub their bodies against one another, but it ended abruptly as the bedroom door opened and a droid entered. A bronze C2N2 holoseries steward droid with broader thighs, no collar ring, and armor plating that resembled a butler's jacket and vest exclaimed, "Good morning, sir and ladies." As Naruto scowled at the robot and said, "Holsword, what are you doing?" the women jumped and hid. "Fulfilling my first duty of the day, addressing you in the morning. I heard your alarm and knew it was time to start the day, sir," Holsword responded nonchalantly. "Okay, well, Holsword, as you can see, I am awake, as are Ula and Talon, everyone is awake," the bounty hunter replied. The service droid turned to Ula and said, "Very good, sir. And shall I prepare the galley for you, Miss Ula?" She responded, "Yes, Holsword, thank you," but her true desire was for him to go so the three of them could continue where they had left off. Holsword walked out of the room, saying, "At once, ma'am." Naruto remarked, "Well, that pretty much killed the mood," as the three of them sighed collectively. The words, "We can always get it back," Ula said, pressing herself against him. Talon grinned and said, "We can certainly try," after she started kissing his neck. As Naruto said, "I'm game," the former Sith lady began to lick the outside of his right ear. "Before I forget, sir," Holsworth said, poking his head in as the door opened again and his hands were moving to their behinds. "I have prepped your armor and pressed your undersuit," the service droid replied, and the Twi'leks broke away from their man. "Thank you, Holsword," Naruto moaned. "My pleasure, sir," Holsword said as he departed again. "Okay, now, the mood is dead," Talon snarled. As their beloved sighed in exasperation, Ula nodded. Ula was wearing a white tank top and underwear, Talon was wearing a black strapless bra and hot pants, and Naruto was wearing a black and gray leather catsuit when they entered the dining area and lounge that had formerly been the scientific research bay. After hearing him and giggling, Ula and Talon went into the kitchen to prepare breakfast for everyone, while Talon went to the dining booth. Their significant other cried out, "Kurama, breakfast time," after taking a little can out of a neighboring cabinet and opening it with a tab. The creature, which had an orange crystal coat instead of the species' typical white coat, emerged from a small improvised housing in a corner of the room. The male Vulptex trotted over to Naruto, who bent down to a food bowl and filled it with the contents of the container, which was pet food of some sort. "That's my good boy, yes you are, Kurama," the bounty hunter said, cooing as the Vulptex immediately began to eat. Naruto saved Kurama from an illicit exotic pet trade years ago, and after the crystal creature showed interest in him, he was adopted. Ah, the feared shadow spider, the galaxy's most dangerous bounty hunter and biggest softie, Talon grinned at her beloved. "In that case," Naruto said, mirroring her facial expression. "Good girl, Talon, such a good girl," he said as he approached and gave her a head pat. Holsworth emerged from the galley with a tray that contained 2 mugs of hot coffee, a dish of sugar, and a small jug of cream. The former Sith lady smiled and then playfully slapped her lover's hand away as he laughed at his joke. "Coffee?" he asked as he carried it over and placed it on the dining table. "Yes, Holsworth, please," Naruto answered. "Thank you, Holsworth," Talon said with a nod. The bounty hunter's drink was made with cream and sugar by the service droid, whereas the former Sith's was made with just sugar. "Holsworth, are there any bounties over the holonet worth pursuing?" his master said. "I'm afraid not, sir, just a few minor fugitives not worth the trouble. The highest one is only 3,000 Republic credits," Holsworth responded. Naruto complained, "Damn, not good enough," and sipped his coffee. "You might have no choice if that's the best we are going to get today," Talon said after receiving hers. As a complaining L3-37 entered, her lover groaned and took a sip of his drink. "Why is it so hard nowadays for a droid to get some decent shutdown time around here?" he asked. Holsworth said, "Good morning, Miss L3. Shut it, Jeeves. Wow, L3, cranky this morning?" Naruto chuckled. "I'm pretty sure that has something to do with you and your women making too much noise last night. I barely got any recharge," replied the elderly gentleman. "Well, why did you take the station closest to my bedroom?" he giggled. Acting like a big sister, L3 remarked, "It's called, looking out for you, like I promised your mother. By the way, you better make time to call her, she worries about you." Smirks Naruto, "I'm sorry, L3, if this is too much for you, you are more than welcome to go back home to the farm." After saying, "Ha. Please, you'd be lost without me, anyway, I'll be in the cockpit, maybe I can make up those hours I lost," L3 continued on to her goal. "I'm pretty sure complaining is her new favorite hobby," the blonde said with a laugh and a shake of his head. Talon laughed at his joke, and Holsworth straightened up while his eyes flashed a few times. After telling the service droid, "Sir, you have an incoming message," from the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, he returned the tray to the galley. Naruto said, I wonder what they want now," after taking a drink of his coffee. "Bede, we got a call coming in," he says, putting down his drink and approaching the holoprojector across the room. A black and red BD unit explorer droid ran out after a minor accident from the main cargo hold. The small robot scampered up to Naruto, who then took it up and placed it next to the holographic receiver. "Bede, I thought I told you to stay out of that room," he said. As the blonde hooked a cable from the holoprojector into the back of the droid's head, Bede beeped twice. "We good?" Naruto inquired. The BD unit gave a nod. The bounty hunter replied, "Okay," and then a hologram of Mace Windu appeared on the screen. "Master Windu, what do I owe the pleasure?" "Another criminal the Jedi can't go after?" the bounty hunter asked. When the Jedi answered, "Not this time, but we do need your help, Spider." While Naruto was able to see Windu, Bede's communication filtering equipment prevented his master from being seen, therefore it was the other way around. When the bounty hunter remarked, "Let's hear it. Not sure if you've heard, but Senator Padme Amidala of Naboo was attacked earlier today on Coruscant. It's possible she was the target of an assassination attempt," the Jedi Master added. "Who would want her dead? Does she have any enemies?" Aside from Newt Gunray and the Trade Federation, there are suspicions that Count Dooku could have orchestrated the attack, though we have our doubts, but Dooku's not the reason I contacted you. Then what is? Senator Amidala, Supreme Chancellor Palpatine has requested she be placed under the protection of the Jedi, but Master Yoda and I have agreed that it might be best if she had some extra protection. We want to hire you to guard the Senator. I'm a bounty hunter, not a bodyguard. To be honest, guarding the senator is only half of what we will be asking of you. What's the other half? We want you to capture the assassin targeting Senator Amidala. Now you've caught my attention, Windu. Good, and you are to bring them to us for questioning about who hired them to target the senator. Keep them alive, got it, my usual fee. Of course, how soon can you be on Coruscant? I'll be there as soon as possible, and I'll bring Talon with me. I'll need her as backup, plus you are going to want her help. As much as we would rather not have her be involved, I cannot help seeing your point. Very well, bring her. After saying, with pleasure, Spider, out, Naruto hung up the phone, disconnected Bede from the holoprojector, set him down on the ground, and returned to the eating booth. Holsworth and Ula emerged from the galley at the same moment, the former with a tray full of fruit, Gartro egg omelets, and hotcakes, and the latter with a mug of coffee for herself. The droid said, "Breakfast is served," prior to the meal being served. "Good, we're going to need the energy, we got a job," Naruto stated as he took a seat beside Talon. Ula sat down and said, "Where is this one taking us?" "Somewhere nice, I hope." "Coruscant." "Oh, I love Coruscant. If I may ask, sir, what business do you have there?" "Apprehending a dangerous criminal. Tracking down a bounty," Holsworth said as he finished serving and put the tray aside. Talon responded, "None of the above," as the three lovers started to eat. "Then what's the job?" inquired Ula. The Lethan Twi'lek replied, "The Jedi are hiring our Spidey to guard a senator and capture an assassin," and then he bit into an omelet. "Guarding a senator? Oh, how sophisticated, truly a step up from your usual work, sir," Holsworth replied. Naruto replied, "Thank you, Holsworth, also, maybe it's best you come along, I could use you on this job too." "Oh sir, it would be an honor, I cannot thank you enough, to be of service to a politician is a dream many service droids have," stated the ecstatic C2 unit. Before sipping his coffee, the bounty hunter said, "I'm glad to hear that. Now, could you tell L3 about our travel plans? Then bring me and Talon our gear, please." "Yes, sir, at once," Holsworth said as he hurried out of the room to fulfill the directives. "Well, if you two are going to be busy, I might as well have a day out in the city, and pick up some supplies," Ula replied after swallowing part of her food. Then he ate some of his hotcakes. "If you're going to do that, better take L3 with you, might put her in a better mood. Coruscant is big on droid rights so no one will give her problems," Naruto said. "And I know I don't have to say this but please be careful, you two, I would love to have you guys back in one piece," Ula said as she bit into the fruit. "Don't worry, baby, Shadow Spider doesn't go down so easily," the blonde winked at her. "Not unless he gets caught in a brothel and is surrounded by women," his green-skinned lover grinned. Naruto furrowed his brow and Talon snorted at that comment. One time, that happened," Talon said. When Holsworth returned to the chamber with 2 repulsor lift capsules, the Twi'lek beauties laughed. "According to the service droid, your equipment, sir and ma'am." Following breakfast, Naruto and Talon opened the capsules and put on their equipment. He quickly put on black and gray armor that covered his upper body, lower legs, outer thighs, forearms, shoulders, and a red spider symbol on his front, a black helmet with glaring white eyes covering his head, and a metal utility belt around his waist. This outfit was known as the Spider Armor Mark III, and its donning marked the arrival of Shadow Spider, the bounty hunter's alter ego. Talon stared down at his rear end, saying, "You always look good in that armor, babe." Her lover turned to her, extended his left hand, and pressed his middle and ring fingers into his palm. A string of what looked like spider silk protruded from the underside of his forearm and attached itself to Talon's abdomen. The former Sith lady was dressed in black armor that covered her legs, arms, midriff, and chest. A black leather belt with a loincloth clung to her waist, and her lightsaber rested over her left hip. "Same to you, hot stuff," he said as he pulled her in and put his arm around her. Ula approached Shadow Spider from behind and gave him a hug on the right arm after grinning and stroking his chest armor. The green Twi'lek pouted, "There you go again, leaving me out of stuff." "Forgive me, let me make it up to you," the bounty hunter said with a laugh. The voice of L3-37 said, "Attention, everyone, we are exiting hyperspace and are coming up on Coruscant, over the ship's public address system," and both women began to cuddle up to him. Shadow Spider said, "Looks like I'll have to take a rain check on that," as he left the room with his lovers. Talon smiled sympathetically and patted Ula's shoulder as she crossed her arms and pouted. After entering the cockpit, the bounty hunter took a seat in the co-pilot's chair and gazed at the planet ahead. "Time to get to work," he said, letting his shoulders drop a little. Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi remarked, "Our presence here will be invisible, milady, I can assure you," as everyone sat down in the Senate apartment complex penthouse suite sitting area. Padme Amidala, a senator and former queen of Naboo, was the victim of a recent assassination attempt, so he and his Padawan learner Anakin Skywalker were tasked with protecting her. Supreme Chancellor Palpatine thought they were the most qualified to protect her because she and the two Jedi were allies during the fight for her planet against the Trade Federation 10 years prior. The man with the eye patch introduced himself to the Jedi as Captain Typho of Her Majesty's Security Force. "Queen Jamila has been informed of your assignment, and I am grateful that you are here, Master Kenobi. The situation is more dangerous than the senator will admit," he said. Padme said, "I don't need security, I need answers, I want to know who's trying to kill me." She was seated between Jar Jar Binks, the junior representative for Gungan, and her handmaiden Dorm. "We are here to protect you, Senator, not to start an investigation," Obi-Wan responded. Anakin said, "We will find out who's trying to kill you, Padme, I promise you," which ran counter to everything his teacher had just declared. The young Padawan had affections for Padme when he first saw her when he was 9 years old, and for the last 10 years, those sentiments have only gotten stronger. "We will not exceed our mandate, my young Padawan learner," his master interrupted abruptly. "I meant that in the interest of protecting her, Master," Anakin said, trying to hide the true motivation for his desire to track out the person attempting to kill her. Emotional ties and material belongings were forbidden in the Jedi Order because they could occasionally lead to the dark side. Obi-Wan said, "We will not go through this exercise again, Anakin, and you will pay attention to my lead." His Padawan asked irritably, "Why?" "What?" The other individuals in the room could sense the tension beginning to build between the two. "Why else do you think we were assigned to her if not to find the killer?" "Protection is a job for local security, not Jedi, it's overkill, Master, investigation is implied in our mandate," remarked Anakin in an effort to persuade his instructor. Said Obi-Wan, "We will do exactly as the Council has instructed, and you will learn your place, young one." Regretfully, Kenobi had witnessed Anakin develop into a promising Jedi over the previous 10 years, but his student had become quite conceited and aware of his own abilities. Obi-Wan attempted to counteract this by trying his best to control his student and teach him humility, but things were not going as planned. In an attempt to lighten the mood, Padme stated, "Perhaps with merely your presence, the mystery surrounding this threat will be revealed." She said something that made Anakin smile a little. She continued to speak, "But I do hope that you too catch the assassin should the opportunity arise, for the sake of my protection, of course, after all, it would be irresponsible not to. She does make a point, Master, the Jedi Padawan said, turning to face his teacher. After giving it some thought, Obi-Wan saw that their arguments made sense and that they would still be carrying out the Jedi Council's directives. He answered, I suppose so, and nodded. Good, said Padme, grinning. Actually, milady, we might have a chance to find the culprit, no matter what happens during our time here, said Captain Typho next. She questioned, What do you mean, Captain? Forgive me, but after the Chancellor agreed to assign Master Kenobi to protect you, I asked Masters Windu and Yoda if there was any way to have some extra security. They told me they knew someone who could help and even track down the assassin targeting you. Obi-Wan inquired, They are sending extra help? Yes, Master Kenobi, they contacted me earlier and informed me of who they hired, the security force captain said with a nod. Anakin inquired, Who are they sending? In addition to feeling insulted that the Jedi Masters who had given him this particular task would bring in another, the young Padawan was upset that he had been denied the opportunity to impress and defend the woman he secretly loved by apprehending her would-be killer. Ah, that must be them now, Typho muttered as the elevator's chime sounded just as he was ready to respond. While everyone else remained in the room, he went to meet with their newest visitors. Thank you for coming, please, come in, was the only thing they heard the security captain say after that. Soon after, Captain Typho returned to the living room, followed by Shadow Spider, Talon, and Holsworth. Dorm gasped in surprise and Jar Jar yelled in terror at the sight of one of the galaxy's most infamous bounty hunters. Despite her efforts to remain calm, Padme was still terrified of the notorious hunter. Anakin, on the other hand, was incensed to see the bounty hunter and the former Sith lady and gave them a death glare. Obi-Wan, on the other hand, was not afraid because he had seen Shadow Spider numerous times at the Jedi Temple and frequently interacted with him. Senator Amidala, let me introduce, said Typho. According to the Senator of Naboo, Shadow Spider, yes, I know who this is, Captain. She got up, approached the bounty hunter, and gave him a quick glance before grinning slightly and saying, You have quite the reputation revolving around you. And the rumors speaking of your beauty don't do you justice, dear Senator. You are far lovelier in person, murmured Shadow Spider, bowing to her. Thank you, Padme said with a smile on her face at the remark. Anakin was seeing the exchange and was not pleased with what was taking place. The bounty hunter turned to face his red-skinned girlfriend and said, Allow me to introduce my companions. This is Talon, former Lady of the Sith, he said. Senator, Talon nodded as he greeted the senator. Padme was taken aback to see the Lethan Trilek and a little suspicious. I've heard rumors of a former Sith traveling with the Shadow Spider, but I thought that is all they were, she remarked. Talon began caressing her lover's arm sensuously, saying, Don't worry, you have nothing to fear from me. The last thing I want is to ruin a high-paying job, especially when it's with my spider. Behave yourself, baby, said Shadow Spider, laughing at her before turning to face his robot. And this is Holsworth, he said. Greetings, Senator Amidala, it is a pleasure to be at your service, said Holsworth as he came forward and bowed. You're a Hollis droid, aren't you? I haven't seen one like you before, Padme said with an inquisitive smile. Spider replied, My own modifications, and trust me, you are going to want him around, plus he makes really good coffee, tea, and cocktails. I really do, Holsworth replied. Just wait until you try my Nebula Sunset, it will melt your cares away, and is perfect for a cold when warmed up. Sounds delightful. I'll have to try it, Padme smiled. The robot replied, adopting the customary position of a butler, just say the word, milady, and I shall not hesitate. She couldn't help but think this droid was cute. Looking at the three of them together, the senator said, "Thank you, but I'm afraid it'll have to be for another time." "I hope you will find out who is trying to assassinate me," he said. "We will, I give you my word," Shadow Spider said emphatically. "Kenobi, good to see you again," was his nod in greeting to the elder Jedi after he had already spotted the other two. "Spider, it's been some time, how go your hunts among the stars?" Obi-Wan gestured back. "Very well, I recently got through with a job that took me to a planet with some very friendly locals, if you get what I am saying," the bounty hunter replied. "Really? I'd like to hear about it sometime," the Jedi said, raising his eyebrows and grinning slightly. "And I hope you are staying out of trouble, Talon," said Kenobi, turning to face Talon. "Of course," Talon said with a little smirk while crossing her arms. Anakin Skywalker was soon discovered by Spider. "You're not needed here, bounty hunter, we can protect Padme without your help," the Jedi Padawan said, taking a step toward him and gazing directly into his eyes. An atmosphere of animosity began to emanate from Anakin. "Good, which means I can focus on my job of hunting down the one trying to kill the senator," answered Shadow Spider. "Maybe I didn't make myself clear, you're not wanted here, so leave, Spider-Man," said Anakin, taking a step closer and scowling. "It's Shadow Spider, and you don't get to tell me what to do, Padawan, your counsel is the one calling the shots here and paying for my services, and I intend to earn my money, is that so?" "Yeah, and you best watch how you talk to me, I thought you would have learned that from the last time, or maybe you need a reminder." With a snarl, Anakin said, "You try it and I will dash." Obi-Wan told his pupil, "Anakin, that's enough, stand down." The Padawan student inhaled angrily while maintaining eye contact with Shadow Spider. "Stand down," his teacher said again. Anakin followed instructions this time and joined Obi-Wan. "My young Padawan," the elder Jedi remarked, "you need to control your emotions." His pupil responded, "This is insulting, Master, it's like the Council is telling us that we're not good enough to complete this mission. We have our orders to protect Padme, Anakin, and Spider has his orders to catch the assassin. We are not being overlooked, the Council has faith in us. But we can do this without any other help, especially not from a scumbag bounty hunter, a service droid, and a former Sith who's more useful to the galaxy from inside a brothel." Everyone was drawn to his comment, but Holsworth's response was to redden his eyes. The service droid rushed at Anakin, seized him by his robes, and flung him to the ground, saying, "How dare you!" Holsworth pinned Anakin to the ground and began strangling him before he could rise. The droid snarled, "You are a very rude little bugger, Anakin." Obi-Wan hurried to assist, but Shadow Spider stopped him. The bounty hunter said, "You don't want to get in the middle of that, trust me." According to the Jedi Knight, Spider, control your droid. He's just doing his job. You're going to have to elaborate on that, Shadow Spider, Padme said, joining their discourse despite her fear for Anakin. "It's the reason why I brought Holsworth. His programming is the combination of a service droid and a bodyguard droid, most of the time. His service programming is the default but his bodyguard protocols kick in under certain circumstances, though, there is a flaw." Turning to Talon, the red-eyed Holsworth said, "Shall I crush his windpipe for you, madam?" The former Sith lady grinned and said, "Tempting, but I can defend my own honor, Holsworth." When the droid said, "But I would so love to squeeze until his eyes pop out of their sockets," his left eye twitched slightly. His programs tend to bleed into each other and it makes him a bit unpredictable, but he is still reliable most of the time, Shadow Spider stated. "Regardless, please call off your droid, Padme said. Holsword, stand down, the bounty hunter commanded his service droid after shrugging. The Jedi Padawan coughed a few times and got up while massaging his neck. Holsword's head twitched and his eyes reverted back to their typical yellow hue before he got up and rejoined his party. It was fortunate that he stopped when he did because Anakin's face was becoming blue at that point. Now that that's settled, let's get back to business, said Shadow Spider, turning back to Padme. Normally I don't do this, but I must ask you, Senator, why are you being targeted? The bounty hunter questioned. I don't suppose you've heard of the military initiative the Republic is trying to pass? Padme said, letting out a short sigh. I don't really follow politics, but it sounds like they are trying to build an army. That's right, to help take on the Separatists. Them I've heard of, Shadow Spider said. Let me take another guess, you're all for it and the Separatists want you out of the way so it doesn't pass. Good guess, but no, I'm actually leading the opposition against the creation of this army, replied Padme. Her interest had reached a climax when Talon questioned, you are? Why? Because it's a declaration of war. If the Republic constructs this army, it just shows the Separatists that we are ready for a war that could last for who knows how long. The only way to properly deal with the Separatists is through peaceful negotiations, not violence. So, you think whoever is trying to assassinate you wants this army to be constructed? Replied Shadow Spider. As everyone waited for Padme to continue speaking, a fresh tension began to rise. Yes, I do, she answered. When her theory was revealed, the Jedi and her companions were taken aback. Darling, this could very well be an inside hit, Talon said, turning to her beloved. Someone from the same side? Someone who wants this army created? Spider inquired. Exactly, someone from the Republic, maybe even the Senate itself. Anakin followed by saying, no, I refuse to believe another senator of the Republic would want to hurt Padme, let alone kill her. Don't be naive, Jedi learner, replied the Twi'lek. Fear is a great and deadly motivator, it can drive people to do anything. I'm afraid she is right, Anakin, said Obi-Wan, stroking his beard. But would a Republic senator really want to target one of their own? Replied Anakin. If it meant the succession in creating this army, I would say so, my young Padawan. Obi-Wan and Talon are right, but Republican or not, someone wants this security measure to pass and will stop at nothing to ensure that it does, Padme remarked. Shadow Spider questioned, do you know who would want to kill or attack you? I don't have any concrete evidence, but I suspect Count Dooku, he leads the Separatists, she replied. Then came Obi-Wan, he was also a Jedi, it's unlikely that he would do such a thing, even if he leads the Separatists. Anakin remarked, but it's not impossible, Master. After giving it some consideration, his guru remarked, no, not impossible, you are right about that, my Padawan. Well, either way, I will catch this assassin, then you can get your answers, Lady Amidala, Shadow Spider replied. Thank you so much, Shadow Spider, Padme said with a grateful nod. He bowed, you can count on me, milady. Anakin was frowning off to the side as he watched them interact. Anyway, Senator, I would like to discuss something important with you, said Shadow Spider as he approached Padme. What's that? She had inquired. May we speak in the other room? Of course, the senator said, nodding. Together, she, Dorm, Shadow Spider, and his two cronies left the chamber. I feel a lot better having both you and the bounty hunter here, at least Senator Amidala will be safe until this matter is resolved. I'll also have an officer on every floor while I'll be at the command center downstairs, Captain Typho stated. Nodded. Excellent, and we will keep you informed if anything happens, Captain. The security captain said, "Thank you," and departed for the command center. Since his neck was still a little hurting from Holsworth's strangulation, Anakin rubbed it. "Yusa okide, Ani." "That clanker is Mui Nutsen," Jar Jar said as he approached him. The Jedi Padawan answered, "Yeah, I'm okay, Jar Jar," and then he scowled at the door that Padme and the others had left. "But unlike Captain Typho, I would feel a lot better if that bounty hunter wasn't around. I don't trust him around Padme," he continued. His instructor said, "You must really control that temper of yours, Anakin, could get you into a lot of trouble one of these days. But don't you find it insulting, Master? Even a little?" "The Council sent him because they think we cannot protect Padme." "Anakin, I told you, the Council has faith that we will protect Padme. Spider is here to hunt down the assassin. We will do our job and he will do his. Once that is done, we will go our separate ways." Anakin let out a sigh and replied, "Yes, Master, but I still would feel better if he wasn't around Padme. I've heard of his reputation with women. She shouldn't have to be around someone like that." Obi-Wan attempted to comfort his pupil by saying, "I'm sure Padme can handle herself if he tries something." "No offense, Master, but you did not see the way she smiled at him," replied Anakin. He was clearly working his charm on her. "If it makin' Yusa feel any more good, she's a berry smilin' to see Yusa, happier den mesa cien her in longo time," laughed Jar Jar. Obi-Wan leaned closer to his student and grinned, saying, "Anakin, it's best to keep yourself focused on our current duties right now. Put those kinds of thoughts aside." "She was pleased to see us," he said. That remark made Anakin very happy. Saying, "Now, let's go inspect the security," his mentor put a hand on his shoulder. The Padawan smiled and said, "Yes, Master," as they departed to carry out the task. After a few hours, though the city was still bright and alive, night had come. A guy in armor was standing in the shade of a skyscraper ledge. A pretty woman got out of a nearby Koro, 2 all-environment exadrive airspeeder and came up to him. "I hit the ship but they used a decoy," she stated. "We'll have to try something more subtle this time, Zam," the figure said in a man's voice. "My client is getting impatient, and I would prefer not to anger this one," the figure said. "He says, 'Take these, but be careful, they're extremely poisonous,' while holding out a glass cylinder to her. "Zam, there can be no mistakes this time," her unidentified ally called as she was ready to go after taking the tube. She nods, covers the lower part of her face with a veil, and then returns to her airspeeder. The interior of Padme's penthouse suite, with the exception of Anakin, Shadow Spider, and Talon, who were on guard in the living room, everyone was asleep. Saying, "Captain Typho has more than enough men downstairs, no assassin will try that way," Obi-Wan came in. "Only the stupid ones would try that way, maybe we'll get lucky," Spider said. Talon couldn't contain his laughter at his joke. Inquiring, "Any activity up here, the Jedi Knight?" replied Anakin, quiet as a tomb, "I don't like just waiting here for something to happen to her." As the bounty hunter put it, "Well, unfortunately, we have to, can't do anything until something happens." Obi-Wan takes a tiny scanner from his belt and checks on the cameras in Padme's bedroom, but finds that they are blocked. "Spider's right, we just have to be patient," he says. "What's going on with the feed?" His student responded, "I don't think she liked me watching her, so she covered the cameras." Incredulous, the elder Jedi asked, "What is she thinking?" Perhaps the idea of a teenage boy glaring at her from the other end of a camera repulsed her, Talon added with a chuckle. "Don't worry, she programmed R2 to warn us if there's an intruder," Anakin said, ignoring her. "It's not an intruder I'm worried about, Anakin, there are many other ways to kill a senator, replied Obi-Wan. Which is why Holsworth is in there too, an extra pair of sensors to catch anything that little astro droid misses. I need to catch this assassin after all, I gave the senator my word, Shadow Spider said. When Anakin realized the truth, he said, "You're using Padme as bait." His rage was growing. The bounty hunter stated, "I wanted to use a decoy, but she was very insistent about using herself. It was her idea. And what if something happens to her? Her blood is on your hands," Anakin said with a frown as he moved in his direction. "Don't get dramatic, like I said, Holsworth is in there to sound any kind of alarm, plus we have Talon, Kenobi, and you, Lady Amidala will be fine." The Jedi Padawan remained silent, but it was clear from his breathing that he was upset. "I must admit that I like her fire, it's pretty attractive. I can see how she took back her planet from the Trade Federation. She'd make one hell of a bounty hunter," Spider said, glancing toward Padme's bedroom. Anakin was trying his hardest not to hit the man in black armor with his lightsaber. Obi-Wan stated, "Well, I still don't like it, it's too risky. Sometimes you have to take risks if you want to achieve your goals." The senator seems to understand that, an admirable trait, Talon stated. This plan was still disliked by both Jedi. Inside the city, Zam placed the glass cylinder in front of her ASN courier droid on a tall building ledge, and the tiny robot took off. Returning to Padme's penthouse, Obi-Wan stood in the entryway, and Anakin stood on an outdoor balcony overlooking the city. The elder Jedi remarked, "You look tired." "I don't sleep well anymore," was the response from his pupil. "Because of your mother?" The Padawan remarked, "I don't know why I keep dreaming about her," after giving a nod. Since the beginning of his training, Obi-Wan had known that his student had trouble letting go of his mother and his past. He tried his hardest to support Anakin through his emotional upheaval, but it was challenging since it seemed like the Padawan was too scared to let go of anything or anybody. Gently, the Jedi Knight remarked, "Dreams pass in time. I'd rather dream of Padme, just being around her is intoxicating," his apprentice retorted. As his tutor said, "Be mindful of your thoughts, Anakin, they can betray you." Anakin returned to the apartment. "Not these thoughts, Master, they are as true as you and I can feel it. But remember, you've made a commitment to the Jedi Order, a commitment not easily broken," replied Obi-Wan. It was a strange struggle since he did not want to see all of Anakin's hard work wasted, but he also wanted Anakin to have something more than just being a Jedi. As Talon overheard their chat and moved toward a window, she added, "And those who do break it eventually become Sith, driven by their selfish wants and desires. It wouldn't surprise me, Kenobi, if your apprentice fell to the temptations of the dark side," Talon said. "I will never succumb to the dark side," the Jedi Padawan said with a scowl at her. "Aw, your overconfidence is almost cute, but I bet countless other Jedi said the same thing before they abandoned the Order," responded the former Sith lady. "That will never happen with me. I have no desire to turn my back on the Jedi and the Council," firmly stated Anakin. Hearing his student's determination, Obi-Wan's lips formed a little, proud smile. Talon looked at Anakin and replied, "Your feelings for the senator have a strong hold over you. If you're not careful, the dark side can manipulate you through them." The Jedi Padawan scowled, "You underestimate me. I will never let the dark side turn me." "I don't think I am. I can sense your arrogance. I've felt it before among the Jedi I face. It led to their own downfalls," she replied. Anakin stated, "Well, they were not me, and I am not them," with a tone that reflected a strong sense of resolution. "If you say so," Talon remarked, shrugging her shoulders despite her dissatisfied expression and crossed arms. When she said, "But to be honest, I doubt the senator would want a boy like you. A woman like her needs a man, a real man." She smirked and stepped back a few paces. Anakin followed her gaze and frowned at what the former Sith lady was implying as she looked at Shadow Spider, who was across the room, applying a tiny screwdriver to the armor on his right forearm. Outside, Zam's ASN courier droid reached the window and used 4 beams to disable the security field. It then burned a hole through the glass, inserted the tip of the cylinder, and opened it to release 2 centipede-like arthropods into the room. Padme was sleeping in her bed, R2-D2 was in sleep mode near the door, and Holsworth was the same except by the senator's nightstand. They went straight to Padme and soon arrived at the bed, but R2 heard their movements and beeped to life. The arthropods hid, and the small astro droid looked around the room for the cause of the commotion. When he couldn't find anything, he went back to sleep mode, and the creatures started moving in Padme's direction. It's almost like a cheap romantic tale. A young Jedi leaves the Order for a woman he loves, though I doubt the story would have a happy ending, Talon added. Why wouldn't it end happily? Shadow Spider asked his beloved as Anakin scowled at her. He couldn't help but be fascinated even though he knew the former Sith lady was attempting to irritate the Padawan. Isn't it obvious? His love for her makes him vulnerable to the temptations of the dark side and he ends up destroying the one person he cherishes above all others. He becomes a monster, unrecognizable to his former allies as well as himself. "Whoa, that is sad," said her lover, somewhat surprised. With a resolute, "Well, that won't happen to me, Anakin," Talon laughed and said, "We'll see." The monsters were approaching the senator's face and neck back in Padme's bedroom. Their movement discreetly set off Holsworth's sensors, causing his eyes to flicker weakly and repeatedly. Anakin frowned at Talon and appeared prepared to strike, saying, "You know nothing about me." Then, an alert from Holsworth informed Shadow Spider of an intruder in Padme's bedroom via the heads-up display inside his helmet. Spider hurried to her location right away, leaving the Force users perplexed until they detected a disturbance emanating from the senator's sleeping quarters and followed him. Holsworth came online, his eyes turning red as a secret compartment on his right thigh opened up. He reached in and took out a blaster, then wasted no time in shooting and killing the poisonous creatures. The arthropods had already reached their target and were prepared to strike when the Shadow Spider burst in, shot webbing at the creatures, and adhered them to the wall. Holsworth's eyes returned to normal as Padme awoke in terror from the chaos. "Oh dear, I hate when that happens," he said, looking surprised as he saw the weapon in his palm. Anakin exclaimed, "Padme," and rushed to the woman senator's aid. "Are you all right?" he asked. She said, "I think so," and then she noticed the dead animals above her head. Kulhuns, highly venomous, a bite from each of them would have killed her in less than a minute, Obi-Wan said as she approached to have a better look at them. He was forced to look to his left as a tingling feeling developed in the back of Shadow Spider's skull. He saw the ASN courier droid still outside the window and realized exactly what was happening. "Little bastard," he snarled before charging into the opening and yelling, "Stay with the senator," to Holsworth and the Force users. As the ASN droid attempted to flee, Spider broke through the glass and threw a line of webbing at it. The bounty hunter's sticky thread adhered to the robot's bottom, and he firmly grasped his line. The droid swiftly took Spider with it as it flew away. "Does he do that often?" inquired Talon, astonished by the bounty hunter's behavior. The former Sith lady grinned and said, "He does, but it just means he's on the hunt." "Good, he'll catch the assassin and that'll be the end of this," said the relieved Jedi Knight. Anakin abruptly left the room, and his tutor saw him and quickly followed. As he ran past Captain Typho, Dorm, and a few guards who were entering to look into what was going on, he yelled, "Anakin! Anakin!" Obi-Wan caught up to Anakin and joined him in the cabin as he was boarding the elevator. The Jedi Knight said, "Anakin, what are you doing, while I'm going to follow the bounty master, Master, he'll lead us to the assassin," his Padawan replied after pressing the ground level button. When Obi-Wan said, "What?" the elevator's doors closed and everything began to descend. "We were sent here to protect Padme, weren't we? Catching the assassin is part of the job. Anakin, we were sent to guard her dash." "Exactly, we were sent to protect her, this is our mission, not his," his student frowned. Since their first encounter, in which the Jedi learner was stuck to the wall by the bounty hunter's webbing, Obi-Wan had known that his Padawan was not the biggest fan of Shadow Spider. This incident dealt a serious blow to Anakin's ego and filled him with a sense of rage that seemed to have only grown stronger over the course of the last few hours. "Are you going to help me or not?" the Padawan asked his teacher after letting out a huge exhale. Obi-Wan sighed in answer. In the city, while Shadow Spider clung to his webbing strand and avoided all approaching traffic, the ASN courier droid flew across a skylane crowded with airspeeders. "Trying to shake me off, huh?" he said as he started to crawl up his thread. The spider extracted a little, flat metal spider from a pocket on his utility belt. "You may lose me, but I'm not losing you," he said as he shut the container. After securing the metal spider to the rear of the droid and releasing his web line, the bounty hunter fell through the air, but he did not fall for very long since he landed on the front of an airspeeder, frightening the driver inside. "Thanks for the catch," Spider said, nodding at them. After jumping off the car and landing on another, he continued to hop across more airspeeders until he leaped onto a skyscraper's side and secured himself to it with just his hands and feet. He remarked, "That wasn't so bad." Shadow Spider rolled onto his back and clung to the wall with just his feet. He tapped the side of his helmet twice before a blinking red dot on his heads-up display began to move quickly through the city. "Lead the way, little guy." Spider swiftly climbed the skyscraper's side and soon reached a ledge at a greater altitude. He halted there and then surveyed the surroundings. He said out loud, "It's a bit of a challenge, but I can make it work." Spider suddenly leaped several feet into the air and threw a web line at a building nearby. The web clung to the building, and the bounty hunter started swinging. He shot a new length of web at another building from his other arm after letting go of his line at the end of the arc. He kept swinging the web toward the direction he could see the red dot blinking. "This spider's coming for you," Shadow Spider muttered. Beyond the Senate apartment building, the younger of the two, Anakin and Obi-Wan, pointed at a green and yellow XJ-6 airspeeder as they were racing across a parking lot. He offered, "Let's try that one, Master," and hurried to it. As his mentor climbed into the passenger seat, the Padawan leaped into the driver's seat. The young Jedi then switched on the car and drove it into the city. "Where did you think the bounty hunter went?" Anakin said out loud. Obi-Wan responded, "Well, he flew off in that direction, let's try our luck that way," gesturing to the city. "Right," the Jedi student said. "Don't worry, my young Padawan, trust the Force, we'll find him." "It's not him I want to find, Master." Atop a building's ledge, leaning on her airspeeder, Zam was searching through binoculars for any indication of her courier droid. She quickly noticed the tiny robot flying in her direction, and a smile spread across her face. The woman remarked, "About time." When the assassin straightened up and her robot came closer, she said, "It better be done," once more. She saw that the hovering robot's bottom still had webbing tied to it. Taken in her palm, Zam said, "What's this? Is this spider silk?" Since there were no arachnids of any type in Coruscant, she couldn't understand why spider silk would be there in this metropolis. She swiftly brushed it off, pointing to her airspeeder and telling her droid, "Get in," saying, "Whatever, as long as the job is done." The small robot obeyed, and she did the same by jumping into the cockpit's driver's seat. Zam then turned on her speeder, drew it away from the ledge, and headed into the city. "I could use a drink," she said confidently as she removed her veil. Abruptly, something fell across her car's left front windshield. "What the?" she exclaimed. Shadow Spider was the enigmatic thing, and he turned to face Sam. When she saw who it was, her eyes widened in terror. "You," she said. "Hi there," the bounty hunter with a spider motif said in a somewhat flirty manner. When Zam increased the speed of her car, Spider briefly lost his hold and staggered toward the cockpit. If he hadn't regained it, he would have gone off entirely. They always run, Spider told himself. When the tingling in the back of his brain returned, Zam drew out her blaster and attempted a shot at him, but he ducked down to avoid it. He called this feeling his spider sense, and it basically served as his personal warning system. "And they always shoot at me." Soon after, he avoided another blaster bolt from Zam. As Obi-Wan and Anakin flew through the city, they looked for any indication of Shadow Spider. "Do you see him?" the Jedi Knight inquired. His apprentice continued to search, but soon both of them heard distant blaster fire. Anakin said, "Master, did you hear that?" "Indeed," Obi-Wan answered. As they scanned their surroundings, the Jedi Knight noticed the distant streaking lights of a blaster being fired. "There," he pointed. Anakin said, "I see it," and then they accelerated their airspeeder to the location of the blaster fire. Zam continued to aim at Shadow Spider, who kept evading her shots, while she navigated skylane traffic in her Koro-2 airspeeder. According to the bounty hunter, "Okay, Plan B." He moved toward the bottom of the car after crawling to the underside of the airspeeder's mandible, which protected him from Zam's blaster. The assassin attempted to find him, but she saw on one of her rearview monitors that another speeder was approaching from her general direction. Zam could tell the occupants were two men, and she sped up her car and dove to avoid them when she saw they were both dressed in Jedi garb. The abrupt acceleration caused Shadow Spider to jerk, but he immediately re-anchored. He asked himself, "What the hell?" Obi-Wan and Anakin were back in their XJ-6 speeder when they observed Shadow Spider fastened to the belly of Zam's Koro-2 as it went into a dive. The Padawan pointed to the bounty hunter and said, "There, Master. I see him." "After him," his mentor said with a nod. Before he flew their XJ-6 to Spider's location, Anakin said, "At once." At that moment, the bounty hunter spotted the Jedi in the speeder that was coming. "What the hell are they doing here?" he shouted. "I told them to stay with the senator." Spider quickly balanced himself as Zam's car abruptly leveled off, allowing the Koro-2 to accelerate. When the bounty hunter remarked, "I'll deal with them later, I got a job to do." To grab Zam's attention, he crawled to the back of her airspeeder and pounded on the glass behind her seat. She turned and was startled to see the bounty hunter with a spider theme there. He commanded, "This is your only warning. Pull over." When Zam frowned, her face changed to resemble a Claudite's, exposing who she really was. Spider exclaimed, "Yikes," as she was shocked to see her true visage. She resumed flying her Koro-2 once her face restored to a human visage, but with a persistent frown. "Have it your way," the bounty hunter appealed to her once more. From his back, for mechanical spider legs protruded, digging their tips into the airspeeder's hull. This provided Spider a firmer grip on the vehicle and freed up his hands, which he fully utilized by raising his arms. He plunged them into the speeder after the gray tubes above his wrists each released a glowing blade resembling a lightsaber. A few explosions soon followed, indicating that the blades had pierced something significant and that the situation was becoming worse. Black smoke and flames began to emerge from between the vehicle's plating. Obi-Wan and Anakin both witnessed the entire event. "What is he doing?" the elder Jedi inquired. "He's about to cost us our only lead." "He's a maniac," his classmate frowned. Zam was doing everything she could to keep the speeder in the air and continue her escape, but it was in vain. Shadow Spider retracted his light blades and mechanical spider legs and crawled to the top of the speeder that was falling towards a busy street during this time. Anakin piloted their airspeeder to go faster and get closer to Zam's, but the Koro, too, began to plummet out of the air, staying out of their reach. When the pedestrians saw the smoking Koro, too, attempting to stay in the air, they were prepared to move aside, but Spider had already come up with a plan. He threw a web line at a nearby building, and when it stuck, he fastened the other end to the top of Zam's airspeeder and started doing it again. Each new web string helped to slow down the Koro, too, and any that broke were replaced right away. Although the car was still blazing, Zam's speeder had stopped and was suspended 10 feet above the road by the time there were nearly 36 web lines. "That was a close one," said Shadow Spider with a huge sigh of relief. At this juncture, Zam opened her door and seized the opportunity to leap to the street and flee once more. Spider attempted to shoot a web line at her after spotting her, but nothing occurred. He also tried with his other hand. He said, "Damn it. I'm out," as he glanced at his wrists. Fortunately, he saw her dash into the crowd and instantly sprang from the smoking speeder to the ground below. He said, "I guess we'll do this the old-fashioned way," and started to go after Zam. When Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived on the scene in their borrowed XJ-6 airspeeder and parked next to the closest curb, they were astounded to discover Zam's Koro, too, hanging in midair from Shadow Spider's web lines. A small group of people had also gathered around the abandoned car. "Well, you cannot deny that he does impressive work," Obi-Wan remarked as he and Anakin exited their speeder. "Excuse me," his pupil murmured, glaring for a moment before approaching a human male in the crowd and tapping him on the shoulder. When the man saw that Anakin was a Jedi, he was momentarily shocked. The Padawan said, "Did you see a person all in black come through here? He might have also had a red spider on his chest as well." The man pointed in the direction he saw Shadow Spider go off in. Yeah, he ran off in that direction, after some woman," he said. "Thank you," said Anakin, nodding before turning back to face Obi-Wan. "A witness saw the bounty hunter go that way after a woman," he said. "A woman?" his master inquired. "Yes, master, either the assassin or some lady of the night." "Well, let's hope it's the former, my Padawan, let's go after him." Anakin bowed, "Yes, master," and he and Obi-Wan fled into the city. In an effort to get away from Shadow Spider, who was also rushing through the pedestrians to catch up to her, Zam ran through crowds of people. Eventually, she found larger groups in which she could hide and evade the bounty hunter. Spider, seeing that she was escaping, leaped onto the side of a building and climbed high to gain a better view of Zam's current location. He saw her squeak through a throng of people and go into a nightclub of some sort. Spider thought, "Now it's getting interesting." He jumped out of the building and headed toward the club, but before he could enter, he heard the words, "Spider," called out to him. Spider turned to see Anakin and Obi-Wan running toward him. I was wondering when you two would find me, he said with his arms crossed. The bounty hunter was convinced that the two had used the Force to find him. Talon had shown him what Force users could do. Upon approaching him, Obi-Wan asked, "Where's the assassin?" Shadow Spider remarked, "In there, most likely to hide in the crowds," indicating in the direction of the club. "Then what are we wanting for?" "Let's go in and get them," Anakin shouted as the bounty hunter stopped him as he attempted to flee to the club. The Padawan glared at him and demanded, "What are you doing?" In response, Spider said, "Kenobi and I will enter, you won't." "What?" Anakin frowned. "You heard me, you are to head to the back of the building, in case the assassin tries to make an escape while me and Kenobi are in there," said the bounty hunter. Anakin's frown deepened somewhat, saying, "You can't tell me what dash." "Listen, you brat, we don't have time for this crap. The longer you stand here complaining, the more time it gives the assassin to make her escape, so just do what you are told," Spider barked. The Padawan could sense his temper growing and the want to use his lightsaber to kill the bounty hunter gradually taking over his thoughts. "Anakin, do what he says," Obi-Wan said as his hands started to quiver. Anakin looked quite angry as he turned to face his lord. "What?" "He's right, Anakin," said Obi-Wan, "time is of the importance, and we cannot afford to give his assassin the chance to disappear forever. However, Master Anakin, please go to the back of the building and cover the back door. We'll meet you there once we have the assassin, okay?" his teacher said quietly, placing a hand on his shoulder. Still enraged by Shadow Spider's remarks, Anakin exhaled deeply before responding, "Yes, Master. We're ready," Obi-Wan said, nodding and giving his pupil a shoulder pat before turning to face Spider. The bounty hunter nodded, and he and the older Jedi entered the nightclub, with the Padawan learner going to the back of the building to block any possible escape routes. As soon as they entered, Obi-Wan and Shadow Spider noticed everyone mingling, drinking, and watching sports on 3 enormous screens. They both knew right away that this crowd would make their search more challenging and possibly dangerous. "So, what do we want to find?" Obi-Wan inquired. Spider said, "Claudite shapeshifter, female, currently in a human disguise, kinda cute, curves in the right places." "I see, then we'll have to be extra cautious. She could be anywhere and anyone here, and could get the jump on us if we are not careful." "Yep, but luckily, this is not my first time in this kind of situation. What do you think we should do?" "We take opposite sides of the club, I take one side, you take the other, cover more ground." Obi-Wan responded, "Very well, in that case, I shall take the side with the bar," and then he began to move in that direction. The bounty hunter continued to move through the crowds in search of the assassin, but he couldn't help but nod flirtatiously to every attractive woman he saw. Shadow Spider didn't bother objecting and smirked beneath his helmet because something told him that the Jedi needed a drink. As he prowled, Spider opened a small hidden slot on the underside of his forearm armor, and a small rectangular device dropped into his free hand. After inserting the rectangle into one of the pouches on his utility belt, he took out another, put the gadget into the slot, and shut it. He then repeated the process with his other arm. When a young man named Belosar approached Obi-Wan on his right and said, "Hey buddy, you want to buy some death sticks?" The Jedi waved his palm in the newcomer's direct line of sight and stated, "You don't want to sell me death sticks." The Belosar partially repeated, "I don't want to sell you death sticks." Obi-Wan waved his hand once more, saying, "You want to go home and rethink your life." The young man said, "I want to go home and rethink my life," and left. The Jedi sipped his drink, but he was secretly proud of himself for using a Jedi mind trick to potentially offer someone a chance at a better and new life. Meanwhile, Shadow Spider continued to patrol the crowds in search of Zam and attract the attention of many women. He passed by a dark corner of the club, and a few seconds later, Zam came out and started to follow him. The nightclub's noise helped to muffle her movements. Zam may have been hired to kill the senator from Naboo, but she was not going to pass up the opportunity to kill the notorious Shadow Spider. If she were to succeed and become the most admired and sought-after assassin in the entire galaxy, her reputation would soar to new heights. She kept herself away from Spider so as not to draw Spider's attention as she took her blaster out of its holster. After stopping and looking around for Zam, Spider's spider sense began to flare up, growing stronger every second. He quickly realized what was happening and spun around, grabbing someone's arm and pointing it at the ceiling. Immediately after, he heard a blaster go off, and Spider turned to see that it was Zam holding her weapon. As everyone in the club got terrified of what was happening and what might happen next, silence descended. "Nice try," Shadow Spider murmured as he met Zam's gaze. While still holding on to Zam, he squeezed her arm, causing her to scream in agony and drop her blaster. He then threw a web line at it and yanked it into his free hand. "So, would you like to proceed in silence this time?" Spider questioned the Clawdite assassin in disguise. Zam frowned slightly, and her gaze shifted from his face to the iron grip he had on her arm before shifting to her weapon in his other hand. She realized there was no way out, and even if she did, Spider would simply catch her again, so she nodded and sighed in frustration. "Good," the bounty hunter said. Obi-Wan then approached and said, "Is everything well, Spider?" He saw Zam instantly. "Is this Dash our objective?" "Yes," Spider answered. The Jedi grinned and said, "Oh, excellent work. Thank you. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Obi-Wan asked the Clawdite assassin. Zam snarled, "Go jump in a Sarlacc pit, filthy Jedi." "Hey! Act appropriately," Shadow Spider cautioned her. She scowled without saying anything more. Obi-Wan turned to face the surrounding throng after Shadow Spider told him, "Anyway, we can go now. Nothing to see here, just some bounty hunter business, go back to your drinks," he replied. Obi-Wan trailed closely behind him as he began dragging Zam toward the rear entrance at the rear of the building. The rear door opened, and Anakin put his lightsaber down, ready to attack if it was the assassin. He relaxed a little when he saw that it was Shadow Spider with a woman, but he still felt a slight urge to attack the bounty hunter. Anakin was waiting for Obi-Wan and Shadow Spider to arrive at the back of the building, though he would prefer if only Obi-Wan showed up. "Got her," Spider declared before dragging Zam out into the alley, pushing her up against the closest wall, and beginning to attach webbing to her. Anakin walked up to Obi-Wan as soon as he emerged from the building and asked, "Master, is that the assassin?" "Yes, it is, my young Padawan," his teacher said. Anakin nodded, "Good," and the two of them moved to the spot where Spider had affixed Zam to the wall. "Now we can get some answers," he said. "Before we do that, and since we have time, I gotta ask you too, whose idea was it to follow me?" the bounty hunter asked, turning to both Jedi after hearing the young Padawan's words. "Mine," declared Anakin sternly. Spider remarked, "I had a feeling," before punching the Padawan hard in the gut. Anakin coughed a few times and felt as like he was going to throw up as all the air was pushed out of him and he collapsed to the ground. "You were meant to be protecting the senator. You were meant to remain with her. What would happen if there were multiple assassins? You're fortunate that Talon and Holsworth are available to help you," Spider reprimanded him. In response, the Padawan merely glared at him. "And you, Kenobi, keep a tighter leash on your student, the bounty hunter said gravely as he turned to face Obi-Wan. The Jedi maintained a straight face despite being somewhat surprised by the tone. Spider extracted a little gadget that resembled a finger clip from his belt. He approached Zam and removed one of her gloves before placing the gadget on one of her fingers. "Let's see who we're dealing with," he said. Spider's heads-up display began to flood with information until Zam's image and details appeared. He removed the clip-like device from her finger and put it back in his belt. "Zam Wessel, a former bounty hunter turned assassin, wow, and you have quite the rap sheet, wanted for multiple accounts of murder, assault, and theft," he said, adding, "and you have quite the hefty bounty on your head. Looks like I found a nice bonus on this job. Now Spider, I'm sure we can work something out. I can give you something better than money," Zam said, putting on a sexy smirk as he thought rapidly. "Oh yeah?" Spider said as he approached her and placed his face in front of hers. "Yeah," she answered quietly. After eventually recovering from Spider's blow, Obi-Wan and Anakin observed the spectacle with bewilderment and a hint of discomfort. As Shadow Spider approached Zam, he said, "You want to know something?" "What?" As he softly grasped her chin, she inquired. "The last woman who made me that same offer, I still turned in for the money." Zam was left in a state of shock when the bounty hunter left, but it was soon followed by annoyance. "Ask your questions, and make it quick, I want to cash her in as soon as possible," Spider said, turning to face the two Jedi. With a nod, Obi-Wan approached Zam and inquired, "Are you aware of the person you were attempting to murder?" "Some senator from Naboo," Zam said, seeing no need in remaining silent. "Who paid you to murder her?" She said, "I don't give out my clients' names." Joining his mentor, Anakin approached her and said, "Who hired you? Tell us." She remained silent. "Tell us right away," he insisted. He did not impress Zam, who sneered, "Or what? Will you cry, young boy?" After Anakin frowned, the Claudite turned to face Shadow Spider and noticed that he was threateningly crossing his arms. "I'd tell him if I were you. I get the feeling he's not above spearing someone in the throat with a lightsaber, and I'd rather collect your bounty while you're still alive," he stated with a serious tone. "Fine, it was a bounty hunter called Dash." Zam blinked at what he said, letting out a little sigh. She fell silent when a tiny metal dart struck her neck, and the three men turned to see where the projectile had come from. They saw a figure fly through the air in a jetpack, and even though the person was in the shadows, Spider could see that they were wearing armor, but he was unable to identify the type. They turned back to Zam and saw her return to her original Claudite form. She exclaimed, "We shonit Slimo," and her body fell limp. After a while, Obi-Wan shook his head and declared, "She's dead," after checking her pulse. "Gosh! Now we'll never know who was trying to kill Padme," an irate Anakin yelled. The older Jedi took the dart from Zam's neck and examined it, saying, "I'm afraid not, my young Padawan, at least not tonight. Some kind of toxic dart, but I don't recognize this type," the older Jedi said. "Spider, do you recognize this type of dart?" he asked, holding the dart to Shadow Spider. After examining it, Spider shook his head and said, "No, I don't." "Damn it, there goes half my reward for this job," he said, looking at Zam after returning the dart to Obi-Wan. A tiny hologlide J-57 cam droid was watching Shadow Spider and the Jedi closely on top of a distant building before it took off. It quickly arrived at the top of a towering skyscraper where a person wearing goggles, a utility belt, and a black bodysuit was standing. "Show me," the J-57 urged as they walked up to the unidentified individual. The canned droid instantly produced a holographic video that showed a variety of Shadow Spider's nighttime activities, including jumping through Padme's bedroom window, web-swinging, bringing down Zam's airspeeder, preventing the speeder from crashing, and webbing Zam to a wall. Yes, he's gotten stronger, the Master will be pleased to see this, and we are almost ready to make our move, stated the unidentified individual.